Hi, this is Eric Smith. Time to do another quick look video, and I thought I would do it from 2 Samuel, the 13th chapter, verse 32, and the Word of God reads this way. Then Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for only Amnon is dead. For by the command of Absalom this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. In this verse right here, we see serious tragedy in King David's family. And it's such a devastating thing to read. Today, we may think about dysfunctional families and we may think of family drama, but this was family drama even beyond something that we would even see in a soap opera. Unfortunately, all these things were happening because of something that actually David did. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But I want to go to the verse. It begins, Then Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother. So Jonadab was actually David's brother's son. So this would make this young man David's nephew. Answered and said. Now the reason he's answering is because he just heard that all of his other sons were killed. He thought that a bunch of his sons was wiped out, and his nephew was correcting this false report. So then he goes, in verse 32, he continues, he says, He answered and said, Let not my lord suppose they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for only Amnon is dead. Now Amnon was King David's son, but his nephew was letting him know a bunch of your sons weren't killed, just him. And he gives the reason why. For by the command of Absalom, and Absalom is another one of David's sons, this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So Absalom had his brother Amnon killed because Amnon literally raped their sister Tamar. He forced himself upon her and then just left her. It was a really disgusting rape of incest. And the other brother, Absalom, wanted revenge against Amnon, and eventually it took him a while, but he got his revenge. And now this is being reported to King David. So King David has a situation where his daughter was raped by one of his sons, and then the other son killed the son that raped the daughter. When we read this, this is a very grieving account. David was a king, a man after God's own heart, and yet his children were doing some despicable, sinful things. And we could ask, why is that? As Christians today, we can go, how can we follow the Lord and then our children do all kinds of things? Sometimes children that even profess to know the Lord. Well, in the case of King David, if you go back to 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 11, when the prophet had come to King David to correct him about what he did with Bathsheba and Bathsheba's husband Uriah, he was telling King David that the Lord was going to punish him for having this man killed and taking this man's wife, and then lying about it, and then, conspiring to murder Bathsheba's husband. This was something that was sinful in the sight of the Lord. So he told the prophet to tell David, this is what was going to happen to you. And when you go back to 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 11, this is what God says through the prophet. I will raise up adversity against you from your own home. So this was ordained by God that he was going to have this type of family drama because of everything that King David did. King David sinned before God. And then he had no immediate remorse over it until the prophet brought it to his attention. It shows you that God sees everything that you do. He saw what King David did. Even though King David was God's man and he was a man of faith, he was a man of faith that did something that he shouldn't have done. And as a Christian today, sometimes you can do sinful things and it'll have a domino effect on your own family. It really will. And that's what happened to King David. He had two sons. One was now dead. The other one was actually running from David, and you'll read that later on if you keep going in this account and go further in 2 Samuel. And eventually, this son actually went against David, and eventually he was killed as well. King David had to face the consequences of his sins, and his sins affected his family. It affected it so much that you had family drama where a daughter was raped, one son was a rapist, and then he was murdered by by the other son. We see that and we think, man, you couldn't write anything that crazy. But this is what happens when you have sin being punished by the Lord. It could affect not only the person that's being punished, which would be King David, but it could also affect your family as well. In fact, the worst punishment David got was actually watching this and knowing that it was going to happen, and God told him that it was going to happen. So this is 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse 32. I just want to do a quick look. This is a sobering account, and it's something that could make us scratch our heads and can make us grieve over King David. He's such a godly man, and he did so many things for the Lord, and he did it by faith. But when you're not doing things for the Lord by faith and you're just following your flesh, the consequences can be devastating. Unsaved people face the consequences of their sins, but they don't care half the time, and they'll blame other people. But the worst thing is for a believer in the true and living God, a believer in Jesus Christ, to commit a sin and then try to hide it. God is going to bring it to light, and then the consequences could be devastating, not just for the person who sinned, but for the people around you. And that's exactly what happened to King David. As always, if the videos on this channel have encouraged your Christian walk and edified you in any way whatsoever, but you have not subscribed to my channel yet and you want to, hit the button. If you want to leave any comments, please do so, but please don't be snarky. Please do not be profane. We want to be Christ-like in everything we say and do as Christians. And remember this, until we do another quick look, these are sober reminders that God sees everything. And in his sovereign will, when he ordains a punishment, it's going to come to pass. And King David had a devastating punishment here. He had to see his family go through drama that showed their wickedness and their sins. But it was a punishment for David as well, because everything that David did to get Bathsheba from Uriah, he could see a mirror of it with his own children. And that was something that he would have to live with until the day he died. As believers today, be careful about committing sin. Sin is nothing to play with because it not only affects you, it affects others. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and God bless.